Fedora 44 is here, folks. From useful features for gamers to extra options for developers. Let me list 9 new features I discovered in Fedora 44. Well, so far. Well, I primarily use Fedora with Gnome, but I'll start with KDE features first. This way, you cannot accuse me of favoritism, or so I hope. Well, Fedora KDE variants are now switching from SDDM to the Plasma Login Manager. Earlier, the SDDM Login Manager worked as a separate login system that didn't fully align with Plasma. Now, KDE uses its own native login manager, and this one creates a more consistent experience from login screen to desktop with better integration and more polished look. The next thing you'll notice is that KDE introduces a Plasma Setup app that handles configuration after installation. Previously, the Anaconda installer handled many of these settings, which could, sometimes overlap or conflict. Now the setup process is cleaner and more logical. Installation handles the basics, while personalization happens after the first boot in a more guided way. Well, I didn't want to say this, but this new KDE feature is actually inspired from Gnome. I'm certain of that. If you have ever used Gnome, you would know what I mean here. Well, I'm sure there are more new changes coming from the latest KDE Plasma 6.6, but since I'm more of a GNOME user, it is easier for me to see the changes between GNOME version 49 and 50. So let's switch to GNOME and see what new features GNOME offers. So in GNOME 50, parental control features sees improvements. Parents can now monitor screen time, set time limits, define bedtime schedules, and auto log the system when limits are reached. This may seem unfair from a kid's point of view, but well, the parents knows best, right? Speaking of improvements, the Orca screen reader now has a redesigned preferences window, global settings, and automatic language switching. I do hope that these changes improve accessibility for visually impaired people. So, a minor change that I noticed is that you can now annotate documents with highlights, text, and lines directly inside the viewer. So, no need for a third party PDF editing tool. For basic needs, this should be good enough. Speaking of minor changes, the file properties window are now free floating instead of moving the entire Nautilus file manager window. Another thing is that a new dialog for managing captions has been added for the grid view. There's also improvements in the search bar inside Nautilus File Manager. So there's case insensitive path suggestion in the top search bar, and when you're searching, you can use multiple filters. These are small changes, but they do improve the overall user experience in GNOME. Speaking more of small changes, there is now a power profile indicator in the top bar. Whenever you switch between performance, balance, or power saving modes, you will see an icon to denote that. This way, you get instant feedback about your system's power state, helping you manage battery life and performance more efficiently. Gamers should be delighted to know that Fedora 44 now supports variable refresh rate. This means if you have a monitor with active synchronization capabilities like FreeSync or G-Sync, you can enjoy smoother gaming and less screen tearing. Why? Because FPS of game will be matched by the refresh rate of the monitor. Well, that's in theory. Now, I don't have such gaming setups and thus I cannot test this feature. But do hope that this new feature works well for the Linux gamers out there with, you know, dope setup. Next, for developers, Fedora now includes support for the next package manager. No, DNF and RPM are not going anywhere. This addition is totally optional and useful for a few developers who prefer Next Package's way of managing software using isolated and reproducible environments. Again, I have not used this feature as I have not experimented with Next yet. It is still on my resolutions for 2026, and I hope that I'll complete that. Anyways, in other new stuff, you have new wallpaper set, which is not something to get excited about, or perhaps it is. Anyways, the Fedora Games Labs pin now uses KDE Plasma instead of XFCE, so that's another thing KDE users can rejoice about. So altogether, these were some of the major visual changes I could find on Fedora 44. Gradually, I have become more comfortable with Fedora as I have been using it for the past 1 year on my main system. Ubuntu 26.04 release is not far, so I have to start experimenting with it on my other laptop. Stay tuned for that video as well. For now, enjoy Fedora, enjoy Linux. Bye bye.